Marcus Wellington never smiled. At 42 years old, he had accomplished what most people only dreamed about. His tech empire was worth $8.7 billion, built from nothing but brilliance and brutality. His cybersecurity systems protected half the world's financial institutions. Banks, governments, corporations, they all depended on the algorithms he'd created. His name appeared on Forbes lists, in Wall Street Journal profiles, at the top of investor portfolios. But success had cost him everything human. His office occupied the entire 52nd floor of the Wellington Tower in Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view that should have inspired awe, the city sprawling beneath him like a kingdom he'd conquered. Instead, Marcus saw only data points, traffic patterns, energy consumption, economic indicators. Even beauty had become something to analyze rather than experience. His ex-wife, Jennifer, had left him after 3 years of marriage. "It's like being married to a computer," she'd said during their final conversation, her voice empty of anger, filled only with exhausted sadness. "You calculate. You optimize. You never just feel." Marcus had responded by asking if she wanted to discuss asset division or if she'd prefer he have his lawyers handle it. She'd laughed, a hollow, broken sound, and walked out of his life. His college friends stopped calling after their invitations went unanswered for the 3rd year in a row. Every conversation with Marcus felt like a business meeting, efficient, purposeful, devoid of warmth. They'd given up trying to reach the person he used to be, accepting that whoever that was had died long ago. Even his own mother had stopped pretending. Last Thanksgiving, the one family obligation he still maintained, Marcus had overheard her whispering to his aunt in the kitchen, "I gave birth to him, raised him, loved him, but I don't know who he became. It's like watching a stranger wear my son's face." Marcus had finished his meal in silence, left exactly when he'd scheduled his departure, and sent his mother flowers the next day with a card that read, "Thank you for dinner. M.W." He didn't care. Or rather, he'd convinced himself he didn't. Emotions were inefficiencies. Caring was a liability. Smiling was a waste of facial muscles that served no productive purpose. He'd eliminated these weaknesses from his life the same way he debugged faulty code. Identify the problem, delete it, move forward. His personal staff learned quickly or didn't last. No small talk. No pleasantries. No questions about his weekend or comments about the weather. Execute your tasks with precision and leave. His executive assistants had become a revolving door. The previous record for longevity was 6 weeks before they either quit or made some fatal error that resulted in their immediate termination. That's why everyone in the office was shocked when Rachel Monroe reached 8 months. She shouldn't have lasted. Rachel was young, 28, and seemed unremarkable at first glance. She wasn't particularly striking, didn't have an Ivy League pedigree, and her resume showed a strange pattern of overqualification for administrative positions. But she was different in ways Marcus couldn't quite articulate. Rachel arrived 15 minutes early every single day. She dressed in muted colors, grays, beiges, navy blues, and kept her dark hair pulled back in a tight, practical bun. She communicated almost exclusively through brief, professional emails even when she sat 20 feet away from his office. She anticipated his needs with uncanny accuracy, never asked unnecessary questions, and maintained an emotional distance that matched his own. She was, in many ways, the perfect assistant for a man who'd forgotten how to be human. But Marcus had begun to notice something odd about Rachel Monroe. At first, Marcus caught only fragments. A whispered, "You can do this," before entering the conference room for a difficult presentation with hostile board members. A muttered, "It's okay. It'll be fine," when a vendor was running 2 hours late and Marcus's impatience was becoming dangerous. Soft encouragements spoken to no one, as if Rachel needed to coach herself through the daily challenges of working for a man who viewed empathy as a character flaw. Marcus dismissed it as quirky but harmless. People had strange habits. As long as Rachel performed her duties flawlessly, which she did, her personal eccentricities were irrelevant to him. Then came the evening that changed everything. It was a Thursday in late October. Marcus was working late, as always. The concept of work-life balance was something he'd eliminated from his vocabulary years ago. Balance implied there was something in life worth balancing work against. For Marcus, there wasn't. At 11 p.m., he emerged from his office, expecting the executive suite to be empty. The cleaning crew didn't arrive until midnight. His staff knew better than to linger after their required hours. But soft voices drifted through the silence. Marcus froze, his instincts sharpening. In his experience, people who stayed late in empty offices were either working against company interests or conducting personal business on company time. Either way, it required investigation. He moved silently across the marble floor, a skill he'd perfected over years of catching lazy employees in the act, and followed the sound to the large conference room at the end of the hall. Through the frosted glass, he could see a single figure seated at the massive mahogany table. Rachel. Papers were spread before her, but she wasn't looking at them. She was looking at the empty chair beside her, speaking in a tone Marcus had never heard from her before. Gentle, intimate, achingly sad. "I know you're disappointed," Rachel said to the vacant seat. "But he's not a bad person. He's just forgotten how to be a person." Marcus's hand tightened on the door frame. She was talking about him. To an empty chair. About him. Silence filled the room, as if someone was responding, someone only Rachel could hear. "You always see the best in people, don't you?" Rachel's smile was heartbreaking in its sadness. "That's why I miss you so much. Every single day, every single moment." Marcus felt something unfamiliar crawl up his spine. Discomfort. Curiosity. Something almost like guilt. "I think he's lonely," Rachel continued, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "All that money, all that power, and he's completely alone in the world. Nobody touches him. Nobody knows him. Remember what you used to say?" She laughed softly, tears evident in her voice. "You'd say, hurt people, but there's still just people hurting." Marcus's breath caught in his throat. I know, Rachel said, as if responding to an argument. "You'd walk right up to him and ask him when he last did something just for joy. Not for profit, not for efficiency, just for the simple pleasure of being alive. You had that gift, didn't you? Making people feel seen, making them feel like they mattered." Her voice cracked, and she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "God, I wish you were here to work your magic on him. I wish you were here for so many reasons." Rachel took a shuddering breath. 6 years this month, Mia. 6 years since the accident, and I still need your advice. I still need you. Mia. Rachel was talking to someone named Mia. Someone who'd been gone for 6 years. Someone who clearly wasn't coming back. Marcus stepped away from the door, his mind racing in unfamiliar directions. The next morning, he did something unprecedented. He asked his head of security to compile a complete background file on Rachel Monroe. The file arrived on Marcus's desk by noon, sealed in a manila envelope marked confidential. Marcus dismissed his afternoon meetings, another unprecedented action that caused ripples of confusion throughout the organization, and locked his office door. For 2 hours, he read every page with an intensity usually reserved for merger negotiations and security protocols. Rachel Monroe had a twin sister, Mia Monroe, born 3 minutes after Rachel on a spring morning 28 years ago. The file contained photographs, official documents, social media archives, newspaper clippings. In every image, the two were inseparable. Identical faces, but their expressions told different stories. Mia's smile was radiant, open, inviting the world in. Rachel's was softer, more reserved, but no less genuine. They'd done everything together. Same elementary school, same high school, same university. Both had studied social work at Columbia, both passionate about helping people who'd been forgotten by society. Their academic records showed brilliant minds dedicated not to wealth or prestige, but to service. Then, 6 years ago, everything stopped. Marcus found the accident report buried in the file. A rainy November evening. Mia was driving home from a community event. A car ran a red light at an intersection. The impact was instantaneous. Mia Monroe, age 22, pronounced dead at the scene. Rachel had been in the passenger seat. She'd survived with minor injuries, physically. After the accident, Rachel's life had derailed completely. She withdrew from her master's program 2 weeks before graduation. She moved from their shared apartment in Morningside Heights to a studio in Brooklyn. She stopped returning calls from friends, from professors, from everyone who'd known them as the Monroe twins. And she took a job as an executive assistant at a mid-level marketing firm, a position that required none of her education, none of her passion, none of her purpose. But there was more in the file. Something that made Marcus pause, his hand hovering over a faded newspaper clipping from 7 years ago. The headline read, "Local twins launch nonprofit to help formerly incarcerated." The photograph showed both sisters at a community center in the Bronx, surrounded by smiling people. Rachel and Mia stood in the center, holding a banner that read, "The Second Smile Project, because everyone deserves a second chance." The article explained their mission, helping men and women recently released from prison rebuild their lives. Job training, resume writing, interview coaching, connections to employers willing to give second chances. They'd operated the entire organization from their small apartment, funding it through part-time jobs and small donations. "We believe in the power of human resilience," Mia was quoted as saying. "People make mistakes, sometimes terrible ones. But a mistake isn't a life sentence. Everyone deserves the opportunity to smile again. Not their first smile of innocence, but their second smile of hard-won redemption." Marcus stared at the photo for a long time. Rachel's face was transformed by joy, absolutely luminous in a way he'd never seen in the 8 months she'd worked for him. This woman, radiant and full of life, seemed like a completely different person from the muted, careful assistant who sent him calendar reminders and fetched his coffee. He found another document. After Mia's death, Rachel had tried desperately to keep the nonprofit alive. For 18 months, she worked herself to exhaustion, attempting to be both twins, the visionary and the implementer, the dreamer and the pragmatist, the heart and the hands. But it wasn't enough. The final newsletter to their small donor list was dated 3.5 years ago. Rachel had written it herself, and even through the professional language, Marcus could feel her breaking. "The Second Smile Project closes its doors today, but the mission remains alive in every life we touched." Mia believed everyone deserved a second chance at happiness, a second smile after life knocked them down. "I tried to continue her vision alone, but I've learned that some work requires two people, one to see the good in others, and one to help them see it in themselves. I was only ever the second person. Without Mia, I'm just going through motions, following scripts she wrote, trying to remember how she made people feel seen and valued and worthy." The Second Smile Project closes today, but Mia's belief in the beauty of human resilience will never die. It lives in the 17 people we helped, and in everyone they touch going forward. I hope that's enough. I hope she would understand that I can't do this without her. I hope she would forgive me. Marcus closed the file slowly. Rachel Monroe wasn't just an efficient assistant. She was a woman who'd lost half of herself and spent the last 6 years merely surviving, going through motions, pretending to be alive while actually being dead inside. He understood that intimately, because he'd been doing exactly the same thing for 23 years. For 3 days, Marcus was distracted. His executive team noticed immediately. Marcus Wellington didn't get distracted. He didn't stare out windows during presentations. He didn't lose his train of thought mid-sentence. He didn't ask people to repeat themselves because his mind was elsewhere. But he did now. He found himself watching Rachel work. Really watching, not just confirming task completion. He noticed things he'd missed before. The way her shoulders carried permanent tension, how her smiles never reached her eyes, the careful distance she maintained from everyone. She moved through the office like a ghost, present but not really there. She was the walking dead, just like him. On Thursday evening, exactly 1 week after he'd first overheard her, Marcus worked late again. It wasn't planned. Or maybe it was, though he wouldn't admit that to himself. At 10:30 p.m., he heard it again. That soft voice drifting from the conference room. This time, he didn't hesitate. He walked directly to the door and knocked twice. The voice stopped abruptly. Through the frosted glass, he saw Rachel stand up quickly, panic in her movements. "Mr. Wellington, I'm so sorry. I'll go immediately. I didn't mean to." "Sit," Marcus said, entering the room. "Please." Rachel sat down slowly, her face pale with mortification. Her papers were spread across the table, foundation documents for the Wellington Charitable Trust that he'd asked her to review. Legitimate work. But that wasn't why she was here. Marcus crossed to the chair beside her, the chair she'd been talking to, and sat down. For a long moment, he said nothing. Rachel looked like she wanted to disappear through the floor. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Then Marcus spoke, his voice unusually quiet. "My brother died when I was 19. Rachel's eyes widened in shock. In 8 months of working together, Marcus had never shared anything personal. Nothing about his family, his past, his life before the empire. His name was Daniel. Marcus continued, staring at the polished surface of the conference table. He was 22, about to graduate from medical school. Top of his class. Everyone loved him. Patients, professors, other students. He had this gift for making people feel comfortable, important, seen. Rachel remained silent, barely breathing. We were supposed to start a company together after he graduated. That was always the plan. He'd handle people. I'd handle technology. He was the face, the heart. I was just the genius younger brother hiding in his shadow, perfectly content to be there. Marcus's voice was flat, reciting facts as if reading from a report. Then one Saturday in April, he took his motorcycle out for a ride. A delivery truck ran a stop sign. Daniel died instantly. "Mr. Wellington," Rachel whispered. "I'm so sorry. After he died, I made a decision." Marcus finally looked at her. "I told myself that emotions were the problem. Caring was the problem. Love was the liability that made loss unbearable. If I didn't love anyone, I couldn't lose anyone. If I didn't connect, I couldn't be broken." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I haven't spoken about Daniel in 23 years. I don't visit his grave. I don't acknowledge his birthday. I removed every photograph of him from my life. I built an $8 billion empire on the principle that human connection is a vulnerability to be eliminated, that efficiency is superior to empathy, that success means never needing anyone." He paused, then added quietly, "I've been very successful, and completely alone." A tear rolled down Rachel's cheek. "But tonight, right now, I need to tell you something." Marcus pulled out his phone, and to Rachel's confusion, opened a document his research team had compiled. "After I heard you talking to Mia last week, I had my people research the Second Smile project. Do you know what happened to the people you and your sister helped?" Rachel shook her head, her voice trembling. "I haven't. I couldn't bear to follow up. It hurt too much." James Martinez, Marcus began reading. "You helped him get a job as a mechanic after 15 years in prison for armed robbery. He now owns 3 auto repair shops in the Bronx and employs 20 people, half of them formerly incarcerated individuals he's giving second chances to." Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. "Keisha Williams. You helped her reconnect with her daughter after 8 years of addiction and incarceration. She's now a certified counselor working in rehabilitation programs at Rikers Island." "Oh my God," Rachel whispered. "There are 17 more stories like this, Rachel. 17 people whose lives you and Mia transformed. And those 17 have helped hundreds more. Your work didn't end when the nonprofit closed. It multiplied. It's still multiplying right now, tonight, while we sit here." Rachel was crying fully now, her shoulders shaking. Marcus felt something strange happening to his face. A tightness. A pull. Muscles he hadn't used in so long they felt atrophied, rusty, forgotten. "Your sister was wrong about one thing," he said softly. "What?" Rachel managed through her tears. "You're not just the person who helps people see good in themselves. You see it too. You saw it in me, apparently, though God knows why." The sensation in his face intensified. Unfamiliar, almost painful. "You told Mia that I'm lonely. You're right. You said I've forgotten how to be a person. Also right." The corners of Marcus's mouth moved upward. It felt foreign, like an atrophied muscle coming back to life after years of disuse. But it was there, small, broken, imperfect, but undeniably real. A smile. Rachel gasped audibly. Marcus's smile felt like cracking ice. Painful, unfamiliar, but something breaking free after being frozen for far too long. "You said your sister would ask me when I last did something just for joy," he continued, that fragile smile still trembling on his face. "Not for profit, not for efficiency, not for any logical reason, just for the simple pleasure of being alive." Rachel wiped her tears but couldn't stop staring at him. The transformation was subtle but profound. For the first time since she'd started working for him, Marcus Wellington looked human. "The answer is the day before Daniel died. 23 years ago." His voice grew softer. "We went to a comedy show in the village. Some terrible comedian doing crowd work, making fun of Daniel's medical school stories. I laughed so hard I couldn't breathe. I actually cried from laughing. Daniel kept elbowing me to shut up because I was laughing louder than the jokes were funny." Marcus's smile widened slightly, though tears now gathered in his own eyes. "That was the last time I felt joy. Real, Uncomplicated, purposeless joy. The next day he died, and I decided joy was too dangerous. Love was too expensive. Connection was too costly. He looked directly at Rachel. I was wrong. And you, talking to your dead sister in an empty conference room because you can't turn off caring about people even when it breaks you. You showed me I was wrong. I don't understand, Rachel whispered. I have a proposition. Marcus pulled up another document on his phone. The Wellington Foundation has $200 million in assets. It exists purely for tax purposes, a legal requirement I've ignored for years. It funds nothing, helps no one, accomplishes nothing except reducing my tax burden. Rachel's eyes widened. I want you to run it, Marcus said firmly. Bring back the Second Smile Project, but bigger. National. Eventually international. You design the programs, you build the team, you decide who to help. I'll fund it. You be the heart that I forgot I had. Mr. Wellington, I'm just an assistant. You're someone who talks to her dead sister because you can't turn off caring about people even when it hurts. Marcus interrupted. That's not weakness, Rachel. That's the rarest kind of strength. You're someone who sees potential in broken people, including a billionaire who forgot how to smile. He paused, and I think Mia would approve. Rachel broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands. Marcus sat quietly beside her, that strange smile still on his face, waiting patiently for the storm to pass. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red but clear. Why? Why would you do this? Because for 23 years, I've been dead while my heart still beats, Marcus said simply. You've been dead for 6 years. Maybe it's time we both tried living again. And maybe the best way to honor the people we lost is to help the people they would have helped. Rachel nodded slowly, unable to speak. Start next month. Hire whoever you need. Design whatever programs make sense. I'll have legal draft the paperwork. Marcus stood, then hesitated. And Rachel? Keep talking to Mia. I think I might start talking to Daniel again. Turns out remembering them doesn't make us weak. Forgetting them did. As Marcus walked toward the door, Rachel called out, Mr. Wellington? He turned back. Thank you, she said simply. That broken smile appeared again on his face. Thank you for reminding me that being human isn't something to be fixed. It's something to be remembered. He left her there in the conference room, papers scattered across the table, tears streaming down her face. But this time, they weren't tears of grief alone. They were tears of possibility, of hope returning after a long, cold winter. Marcus returned to his office and did something he hadn't done in 23 years. He opened his bottom desk drawer, where he'd hidden a single photograph face down beneath old tax documents. He turned it over. Daniel smiled back at him from the picture, young, vibrant, full of life. They were at their college graduation, arms around each other's shoulders, the future stretching before them like an endless summer. Hey, brother, Marcus whispered to the photograph. I'm sorry it took me so long, but I think I'm finally ready to stop running from you. 3 months transformed everything. Rachel moved with purpose Marcus had never witnessed in her before. She'd assembled a team of 5 former social workers, rehabilitation specialists, people who believed in second chances the way Mia once had. The Wellington Foundation offices, previously dusty and unused, now buzzed with energy and hope. Marcus found himself actually reading her weekly reports with genuine interest, not scanning for efficiency metrics or cost-benefit analyses, but reading about people. About Maria, a former addict who'd gotten her nursing certification. About Darnell, who'd served 12 years for a crime committed at 19 and was now managing a warehouse. About Christina, reconnecting with children she'd lost to the foster system. Rachel had launched 5 pilot programs across different cities. Job training in manufacturing, culinary arts certification for restaurant work, technology skills for the digital economy, small business mentorship for aspiring entrepreneurs, and family reunification counseling. The Second Smile Project was alive again and growing. Marcus even caught himself smiling occasionally, still awkward, still rare, but present. His executive team whispered about the change, uncertain how to interpret their boss's sudden humanity. Some found it unsettling. Others found it hopeful. His mother called one evening, her voice cautious. Marcus, I heard about the foundation. About what you're doing. It's Rachel's vision, he'd said. I'm just writing checks. No, his mother replied firmly. Writing checks is what the old Marcus would have done and never thought about again. You're actually involved. You're present. I can hear it in your voice. Marcus had been silent for a moment, then said quietly, I'm trying, Mom. I'm trying to remember who I was before I decided not to feel anything. His mother had cried then, and for the first time in decades, Marcus let her. One evening in late January, Rachel knocked on his office door. We have our first graduation ceremony tomorrow. 20 people completing the advanced manufacturing program. They'll all have job offers waiting. She hesitated. Would you come? Marcus looked up from his computer, surprised. To the ceremony? I know it's not your usual thing, but these people, they know the Wellington Foundation gave them this chance. It would mean something if you were there. Rachel smiled tentatively. You don't have to speak or anything. Just be present. Marcus considered refusing. Public events, emotional displays, the messiness of human celebration. These were things he'd avoided for decades. But Rachel was looking at him with those eyes that had seen too much loss and were now daring to hope again. And he remembered his own words. Maybe it's time we both tried living again. What time? He asked. Rachel's smile was genuine sunlight. 10 a.m. The community center in the Bronx. The community center was nothing like the sleek, minimalist spaces Marcus usually inhabited. Folding chairs, fluorescent lights, decorations that were enthusiastic rather than elegant. Families filled the room. Children, elderly parents, friends who'd stood by people through their darkest times. The 20 graduates sat in the front row, wearing matching polo shirts with the Second Smile Project logo. Their faces showed pride, nervousness, hope. Rachel spoke first, her voice steady and warm. She talked about second chances, about the power of believing in human potential, about her sister's vision that everyone deserves to smile again after life knocks them down. Then she did something Marcus hadn't expected. She called him to the podium. Mr. Marcus Wellington, founder of the Wellington Foundation, would like to say a few words. Marcus stood slowly, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't since Daniel's funeral. He walked to the front, faced the crowd, and felt completely unprepared. He cleared his throat. I'm not good at this, he began honestly. Public speaking isn't my strength. Connection isn't my strength. Until recently, I would have told you that emotions are inefficiencies and caring about people is a waste of resources. Some uncomfortable shuffling in the audience. But someone very wise reminded me that being human isn't a weakness. It's what makes us capable of remarkable things. He glanced at Rachel. The 20 people graduating today have overcome obstacles I can't imagine. They've made mistakes, paid for them, and chosen to become better. That takes courage I've never had. His voice grew stronger. I built a billion-dollar company by trusting algorithms and data. But algorithms can't capture what I see in this room. People who refuse to let their past define their future. That's not something you can code or calculate. That's something that only exists in the human heart. Marcus felt that familiar tightness in his face, and this time he didn't fight it. So congratulations. Not just for completing this program, but for being brave enough to believe in yourselves when the world told you not to. You've earned your second smile. The applause was thunderous. Several graduates were crying. One elderly woman in the front row, someone's mother or grandmother, nodded at him with such profound approval that Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. As he returned to his seat, Rachel squeezed his hand briefly. Mia would have liked that, she whispered. Daniel too. And Marcus smiled. Easily this time, naturally, because she was absolutely right. After the ceremony, Marcus stood awkwardly near the refreshment table, holding a paper cup of punch and trying to remember how to make small talk. Rachel was surrounded by graduates, their families, program coordinators. Everyone wanted to thank her, to share their stories, to tell her what this meant to them. A young man approached Marcus. Mid-20s, clean-cut, wearing one of the graduate polo shirts. He had kind eyes and a nervous smile. Mr. Wellington? I'm James Martinez, Jr. Marcus shook his hand. Congratulations on completing the program, James. Thank you, sir. It's been life-changing. James glanced back at an older man across the room, presumably his father, who was watching them intently. But I wanted to talk to you about something else. Something important. All right, Marcus said, his business instincts engaging. Perhaps a job opportunity, a recommendation, networking advice. My dad is James Martinez Sr. He's one of the original people Ms. Monroe and her sister helped years ago, before they had to close down the nonprofit. Marcus's attention sharpened. I know about your father. He owns 3 auto shops now, employs 20 people. His story is one of the reasons we relaunched the foundation. Right? But there's something you don't know. Something nobody knows except our family. James took a deep breath, clearly struggling with what to say next. 6 years ago, my dad was driving home from his job. The mechanic job that Ms. Rachel and Ms. Mia helped him get. His first real job after 15 years in prison. Marcus felt a cold prickle at the back of his neck. It was November. Raining. Dark. James's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. A car ran a red light at an intersection. My dad swerved to avoid it. He missed the car that ran the light, but when he swerved, James's eyes filled with tears. He hit another car. A Honda Civic. The impact was on the driver's side. No, this couldn't be. The driver of that car died instantly. James continued, his voice breaking. The police said it wasn't my dad's fault. The other car ran the light, forced the swerve. No charges were filed. Just a terrible accident. He wiped his eyes. The woman who died. Her name was Mia Monroe. Marcus's blood turned to ice. The paper cup crumpled in his hand, punch splashing onto the floor. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what he was hearing. My dad didn't know at first. James rushed on. He was traumatized by the accident, by killing someone even though it wasn't his fault. Then, 6 months ago, when the Wellington Foundation was announced, he saw Ms. Rachel's picture in the newspaper article. He recognized her immediately. She looked exactly like the woman he'd killed. Does Rachel know? Marcus managed to ask, his voice hoarse. No. My dad has been trying to work up the courage to tell her. He visits Ms. Mia's grave every single week. He named my baby sister Mia. Every person he employs, every life he changes, every dollar he gives to charity. It's all his way of honoring the woman who gave him a second chance, the woman he accidentally took from the world. James was fully crying now. He's terrified to tell Ms. Rachel. Terrified she'll hate him, that she'll shut down the foundation if she knows, that everything he's built to honor Ms. Mia will come crashing down. But he wanted someone to know the truth. He wanted you to know what this all means, the circle of it. Marcus felt like he was drowning. The circle? Ms. Mia saved my dad from a life of crime. My dad's accident took Ms. Mia from the world. Now Ms. Rachel is saving people through the foundation, and I'm one of them. My dad's son, getting a second chance because of the woman whose life was ended by his father. James's voice was anguished. We're all connected, by tragedy, by grace, by something bigger than any of us understand. After James walked away, Marcus stood frozen, unable to move, unable to think. Across the room, Rachel was laughing with a graduate's grandmother, her face radiant with joy for the first time in years. She had no idea that the man whose success story they'd celebrated, whose transformation they'd highlighted as proof that the Second Smile project worked, that man had killed her sister. The man Rachel and Mia had saved had accidentally killed Mia. And Rachel had no idea. Marcus excused himself quietly and walked outside into the cold January air. He made it to his car before his legs gave out. He sat in the driver's seat, door open, and for the first time in 23 years, since Daniel's funeral, Marcus Wellington wept. Not quiet tears, but wrenching sobs that tore from somewhere deep in his chest. He cried for Daniel, for Mia, for Rachel, for James Martinez, and the impossible burden he carried. He cried for the brutal randomness of life, for the way grace and tragedy could be so hopelessly tangled that you couldn't separate them. He cried because he'd just learned to smile again, and now he had to figure out how to tell Rachel something that might destroy her. Marcus didn't return to the ceremony. He sat in his car for 2 hours, engine off, staring at nothing while his mind raced through impossible scenarios. Should he tell Rachel? Should he keep the secret? Should he confront James Martinez Sr.? What right did he have to make any of these decisions? By the time he returned to the office that evening, he'd made no progress. His desk felt like a cage, his usual refuge now oppressive. Every surface reminded him of the life he'd built on emotional distance, and how quickly that distance had evaporated once he'd let himself feel again. Rachel found him there at 8 p.m., still in his coat, staring at the city lights. "Hey," she said softly from the doorway. "You disappeared. I was worried." "I'm fine," Marcus lied automatically. Rachel crossed the office and sat in the chair across from his desk, something she'd never done before. The old boundaries between them had dissolved over the past 3 months. "You're not fine," she said gently. "What happened?" Marcus looked at her. really looked at her. 3 months ago, she'd been a ghost. Now she was alive again, laughing, hopeful, purposeful. The foundation had given her something to wake up for, a way to honor Mia that didn't involve drowning in grief. And he was about to destroy that. Rachel, I need to tell you something. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled. But first, I need you to know that you can choose not to hear it. Once I tell you, there's no going back. Your life will be different. Rachel's expression shifted to concern. Marcus, you're scaring me. He noticed she'd started calling him Marcus instead of Mr. Wellington. When had that changed? James Martinez wants to meet with you, Marcus said carefully. The father, not the son. Rachel's face lit up. Really? I'd love to see how he's doing. It's been years since Mia and I helped him. I want to hear about his businesses, his family, everything. Rachel, stop. Marcus held up his hand. There's something you need to know before you meet him. Something about the accident. About Mia. The color drained from Rachel's face. What about Mia? Marcus told her everything. Every word James Jr. had shared. The rainy November night. The car running the red light. James swerving to avoid it. The Honda Civic. The impact. The instant death. He watched Rachel's face cycle through disbelief, shock, horror, and finally a grief so profound it seemed to physically age her in moments. No, she whispered. No, no, no. The police cleared him of all responsibility, Marcus said quickly. It was the other car's fault, the one that ran the light. James swerved to avoid it. He was a victim of the same circumstance that killed Mia. Just on the other side of the collision. Rachel stood abruptly, her chair scraping across the floor. She walked to the window, arms wrapped around herself as if holding her body together by force. All this time, she said in a hollow voice. All this time, I've been celebrating his success, using his story to inspire others, telling people about the man we saved. Her voice broke. The man we saved killed my sister. Rachel, get out. Marcus stood. What? Get out of your office. I need to be alone. I can't. She was hyperventilating now, her hands shaking violently. Marcus didn't leave. Instead, he did something the old Marcus Wellington never would have done. He crossed to her and stood beside her at the window, not touching, just present. Listen to me, he said firmly. You have a choice. You can let this destroy you, or you can let this complete the circle. Complete. Rachel's laugh was bitter, broken. She's gone because of him. Because we helped him. Because we saved him so he could be on that road that night to kill her. If we'd never helped him, she'd still be alive. Stop. Marcus's voice cut through her spiral. You don't know that. You can't know that. Life doesn't work in straight lines where we can trace every cause to every effect. It's chaos, Rachel. Beautiful, terrible chaos. Don't philosophy at me right now. James Martinez didn't waste the gift you and Mia gave him. Marcus continued relentlessly. He multiplied it. His daughter is named Mia. 20 people have jobs because of him. Those 20 people have families, children who eat because their parents work. And his son just graduated from your program. That young man will go on to help more people. Rachel was sobbing now, her forehead pressed against the cold glass. Mia died because of a random accident involving a man whose life she'd saved, Marcus said softly. But that man has spent 6 years honoring her memory in the only way he knew how, by living the life she believed he deserved, by being worthy of the second chance she gave him. She should be here, Rachel said through her tears. She should be here seeing this, building this foundation with me, meeting these people, changing these lives. She should be here. Yes, Marcus said simply. She should. And so should Daniel. But they're not. And we are. And we have a choice, Rachel. We can honor them by living fully, by loving dangerously, by believing in second chances even when they come with impossible pain. Or we can dishonor them by dying while our hearts still beat. Rachel turned to look at him, her face devastated. When did you get so wise? When an assistant who talks to her dead sister reminded me that being human isn't a weakness. Marcus held her gaze. James Martinez wants to tell you himself. He wants to apologize, to explain, to ask for forgiveness he doesn't think he deserves. You don't have to meet him. You don't have to forgive him. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. What if I can't? Rachel whispered. What if I meet him and I hate him and I can't do this anymore? Then that's okay too, Marcus said. But Rachel, I think Mia would want you to close the circle. I think she'd want you to see what became of the man she believed in. And I think maybe she'd want you to finally let her go. Rachel slid down to the floor, her back against the window, and wept. Marcus sat down beside her, two broken people on an office floor, and for the first time in either of their lives, neither of them was alone in their grief. After a long time, Rachel said quietly, I want to meet him. Not to forgive him, I don't know if I can. But to close the circle, like you said. Marcus nodded. I'll arrange it. Marcus. Yes. Thank you for not letting me face this alone. He reached over and took her hand. That's what Daniel would have done. That's what Mia would have done. Maybe it's time we learned from them. They sat together in the darkness, holding on to each other while the city hummed below them. Indifferent to human suffering and human grace, in equal measure Marcus didn't return to the ceremony. He sat in his car for 2 hours, engine off, staring at nothing while his mind raced through impossible scenarios. Should he tell Rachel? Should he keep the secret? Should he confront James Martinez Sr.? What right did he have to make any of these decisions? By the time he returned to the office that evening, he'd made no progress. His desk felt like a cage, his usual refuge now oppressive. Every surface reminded him of the life he'd built on emotional distance, and how quickly that distance had evaporated once he'd let himself feel again. Rachel found him there at 8 p.m., still in his coat, staring at the city lights. Hey, she said softly from the doorway. You disappeared. I was worried. I'm fine, Marcus lied automatically. Rachel crossed the office and sat in the chair across from his desk, something she'd never done before. The old boundaries between them had dissolved over the past 3 months. You're not fine, she said gently. What happened? Marcus looked at her. Really looked at her. 3 months ago, she'd been a ghost. Now she was alive again, laughing, hopeful, purposeful. The foundation had given her something to wake up for, a way to honor Mia that didn't involve drowning in grief. And he was about to destroy that. Rachel, I need to tell you something. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled. But first, I need you to know that you can choose not to hear it. Once I tell you, there's no going back. Your life will be different. Rachel's expression shifted to concern. Marcus, you're scaring me. He noticed she'd started calling him Marcus instead of Mr. Wellington. When had that changed? James Martinez wants to meet with you, Marcus said carefully. The father, not the son. Rachel's face lit up. Really? I'd love to see how he's doing. It's been years since Mia and I helped him. I want to hear about his businesses, his family, everything. Rachel, stop. Marcus held up his hand. There's something you need to know before you meet him. Something about the accident. About Mia. The color drained from Rachel's face. What about Mia? Marcus told her everything. Every word James Jr. had shared. The rainy November night. The car running the red light. James swerving to avoid it. The Honda Civic. The impact. The instant death. He watched Rachel's face cycle through disbelief, shock, horror, and finally a grief so profound it seemed to physically age her in moments. No, she whispered. No, no, no. The police cleared him of all responsibility, Marcus said quickly. It was the other car's fault, the one that ran the light. James swerved to avoid it. He was a victim of the same circumstance that killed Mia. Just on the other side of the collision. Rachel stood abruptly, her chair scraping across the floor. She walked to the window, arms wrapped around herself as if holding her body together by force. All this time, she said in a hollow voice. All this time, I've been celebrating his success, using his story to inspire others, telling people about the man we saved. Her voice broke. The man we saved killed my sister. Rachel. She should be here, Rachel said, her voice cracking. She should be here seeing this, building this foundation with me, meeting these people, changing these lives. Marcus crossed to her and stood beside her at the window. Yes, he said simply. She should. And so should Daniel. But they're not. And we are. He paused, choosing his words carefully. You have a choice, Rachel. You can let this destroy you, or you can let this complete the circle. Complete. Rachel's laugh was bitter. She's gone because of an accident, because of randomness, because life is brutal and unfair. Marcus's voice was firm but gentle. But James Martinez didn't waste the gift you and Mia gave him. He multiplied it. His daughter is named Mia. 20 people have jobs because of him. Those 20 people have families, children who eat because their parents work. And his son just graduated from your program. Rachel turned to look at him, tears streaming down her face. Mia died in an accident involving a man whose life she'd saved, Marcus continued. But that man has spent 6 years honoring her memory by being worthy of the second chance she gave him, by living the life she believed he deserved. When did you get so wise? Rachel whispered. When an assistant who talks to her dead sister reminded me that being human isn't a weakness. Marcus met her gaze. James wants to tell you himself. He wants to apologize, to explain. You don't have to meet him. You don't have to forgive him. But I think maybe closing this circle is what both of you need. Rachel slid down to the floor, her back against the window. Marcus sat beside her, and for a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Rachel said quietly, I want to meet him. Not to forgive him. I don't know if I can. But to understand. To close the circle. Marcus nodded. I'll arrange it. Marcus. Yes. Thank you for not letting me face this alone. He squeezed her hand. That's what Daniel would have done. That's what Mia would have done. Marcus didn't return to the ceremony. He sat in his car for 2 hours, engine off, staring at nothing while his mind raced through impossible scenarios. Should he tell Rachel? Should he keep the secret? Should he confront James Martinez Sr.? What right did he have to make any of these decisions? By the time he returned to the office that evening, he'd made no progress. His desk felt like a cage, his usual refuge now oppressive. Every surface reminded him of the life he'd built on emotional distance, and how quickly that distance had evaporated once he'd let himself feel again. Rachel found him there at 8 p.m., still in his coat, staring at the city lights. Hey, she said softly from the doorway. You disappeared. I was worried. I'm fine, Marcus lied automatically. Rachel crossed the office and sat in the chair across from his desk, something she'd never done before. The old boundaries between them had dissolved over the past 3 months. You're not fine, she said gently. What happened? Marcus looked at her. Really looked at her. 3 months ago, she'd been a ghost. Now she was alive again, laughing, hopeful, purposeful. The foundation had given her something to wake up for, a way to honor Mia that didn't involve drowning in grief. And he was about to destroy that. Rachel, I need to tell you something. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled. But first, I need you to know that you can choose not to hear it. Once I tell you, there's no going back. Your life will be different. Rachel's expression shifted to concern. Marcus, you're scaring me. He noticed she'd started calling him Marcus instead of Mr. Wellington. When had that changed? James Martinez wants to meet with you, Marcus said carefully. The father, not the son. Rachel's face lit up. Really? I'd love to see how he's doing. It's been years since Mia and I helped him. I want to hear about his businesses, his family, everything. Rachel, stop. Marcus held up his hand. There's something you need to know before you meet him. Something about the accident. About Mia. The color drained from Rachel's face. What about Mia? Marcus told her everything. Every word James Jr. had shared. The rainy November night. The car running the red light. James swerving to avoid it. The Honda Civic. The impact. The instant death. He watched Rachel's face cycle through disbelief, shock, horror, and finally a grief so profound it seemed to physically age her in moments. No, she whispered. No, no, no. The police cleared him of all responsibility, Marcus said quickly. It was the other car's fault, the one that ran the light. James swerved to avoid it. He was a victim of the same circumstance that killed Mia, just on the other side of the collision. Rachel stood abruptly, her chair scraping across the floor. She walked to the window, arms wrapped around herself as if holding her body together by force. All this time, she said in a hollow voice, all this time, I've been celebrating his success, using his story to inspire others, telling people about the man we saved. Her voice broke. The man we saved killed my sister. Rachel. She should be here, Rachel said, her voice cracking. She should be here seeing this, building this foundation with me, meeting these people, changing these lives. Marcus crossed to her and stood beside her at the window. Yes, he said simply. She should, and so should Daniel. But they're not. And we are. He paused, choosing his words carefully. You have a choice, Rachel. You can let this destroy you, or you can let this complete the circle. Complete. Rachel's laugh was bitter. She's gone because of an accident, because of randomness, because life is brutal and unfair. Marcus's voice was firm but gentle. But James Martinez didn't waste the gift you and Mia gave him. He multiplied it. His daughter is named Mia. 20 people have jobs because of him. Those 20 people have families, children who eat because their parents work. And his son just graduated from your program. Rachel turned to look at him, tears streaming down her face. Mia died in an accident involving a man whose life she'd saved, Marcus continued. But that man has spent 6 years honoring her memory by being worthy of the second chance she gave him, by living the life she believed he deserved. When did you get so wise? Rachel whispered. When an assistant who talks to her dead sister reminded me that being human isn't a weakness. Marcus met her gaze. James wants to tell you himself. He wants to apologize, to explain. You don't have to meet him. You don't have to forgive him. But I think maybe closing this circle is what both of you need. Rachel slid down to the floor, her back against the window. Marcus sat beside her, and for a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Rachel said quietly, I want to meet him. Not to forgive him, I don't know if I can. But to understand. To close the circle. Marcus nodded. I'll arrange it. Marcus. Yes. Thank you for not letting me face this alone 1 year later. The Wellington Foundation Gala filled the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel. 500 people an evening were celebrated the foundation's achievements. 8 programs across 12 cities. Over 300 lives directly transformed. Thousands more impacted through the ripple effects. Rachel wore a midnight blue dress, her hair down for the first time Marcus could remember. She looked radiant, alive in a way that seemed impossible just a year ago. She'd stopped talking to Mia in empty rooms, not because she'd forgotten her sister, but because she'd finally learned to carry Mia's memory without being crushed by it. Marcus stood backstage, adjusting his bow tie nervously. Public speaking still terrified him, but some things were worth the fear. You'll be great, Rachel said, appearing beside him. Just speak from the heart. Daniel was always the one who could do that, Marcus admitted. I'm still learning. Then it's a good thing you have the rest of your life to practice. Rachel squeezed his arm. We both do. When Marcus took the stage, the room quieted. He gripped the podium, looked out at the sea of faces, and made a decision to be completely honest. I'm going to tell you about my brother Daniel, he began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. And I'm going to tell you why I didn't smile for 23 years. And then I'm going to tell you about the woman who taught me that the bravest thing we can do is let ourselves be human, even when it hurts. For 20 minutes, Marcus spoke. He told them about Daniel's death and his own death in life that followed. He told them about Rachel talking to her sister in an empty conference room. He told them about the Second Smile Project and what it really meant, not just helping people rebuild after mistakes, but helping all of us rebuild after loss. He cried twice. The second time was when he spoke about James Martinez and the impossible circle of grace that connected his story to Mia's death to Rachel's healing. Life is brutal, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. It takes people we love without warning or mercy. It creates impossible coincidences that feel more like cosmic cruelty than divine plan. But life is also beautiful because of people like Rachel Monroe, who choose to build rather than destroy, to love rather than hate, to offer grace when everything in them screams for vengeance. He paused, finding Rachel in the audience. She was crying, smiling, radiant. The Second Smile Project is about second chances, Marcus continued. But I've learned it's also about first chances. The first time we choose to live again after loss. The first time we smile after forgetting how. The first time we let ourselves care after deciding it was safer not to. He looked directly at Rachel. My assistant used to talk to her dead sister. I used to think that was tragic. Now I know it's beautiful, because she never stopped believing in human goodness, even when life gave her every reason to stop. Even when that belief broke her heart. The applause started slowly, then built to something thunderous. People stood, wiping their own tears, moved by the raw honesty of a billionaire who'd finally learned to be human. Backstage afterward, Rachel threw her arms around Marcus. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For letting me save you while you were saving me. Marcus smiled. Easily now, naturally, the way Daniel used to smile. I think Mia and Daniel would be friends if they could see all this. They probably are, Rachel said, laughing through her tears. Somewhere, comparing notes on how exhausting we are to deal with. They both laughed then, and the sound was full of joy and grief tangled together in that uniquely human way. Later that night, Marcus stood alone in his office, the same office where he'd spent decades building walls between himself and the world. He pulled out his phone and looked at the photo he now kept as his background. Daniel at their college graduation, arm around Marcus's shoulder, both of them smiling at a future full of possibility. "I did it, brother," Marcus whispered. "I finally stopped running from you. From feeling. From being human." He thought about Rachel, probably in her own apartment right now, maybe talking to Mia one last time about the evening. He thought about James Martinez, visiting Mia's grave tomorrow like he did every week, bringing flowers and stories of lives changed. He thought about the 300 people whose lives had been transformed by the foundation, and the thousands more who'd be helped in years to come. The cycle was complete. Hurt people healing people, who would go on to heal others. Broken billionaires and grieving assistants and reformed ex-convicts and everyone in between, all connected by the radical belief that everyone deserves a second smile. Marcus Wellington had discovered that joy isn't found in eliminating human connection. It's found in embracing every messy, painful, beautiful piece of it. In choosing to love even when love means loss. In daring to smile even when smiling means remembering those who can't smile with us anymore. He looked at his reflection in the office window, truly looked, maybe for the first time in 23 years, and saw not the cold, calculating machine he'd built himself into, but a man, flawed, grieving, healing, and finally, blessedly alive. Marcus smiled at his reflection, and he never stopped smiling again.